Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 160. I'm your host, James Shotwell, and it's great to be with you again. I just realized that the show is coming up on our 5-year anniversary, and I cannot thank you enough for your continued support. I think the show has been getting better, I think our guests have been getting bigger, and we have a lot more on the horizon. We have a lot left to do, so please stick around, tell your friends, and continue to subscribe to the show. Today's guest is none other than September from the band September Mourning. If you are unfamiliar, allow me to give you a little bit of knowledge about one of the wildest things happening in entertainment today. September Mourning is a transmedia dark culture project started by Emily Lazar and Mark Silvestri. The project centers on a fictional concept of a human Grim Reaper hybrid named September as she navigates the world of the living and the world of the dead, with her human side possessing the empathy to give human souls a second chance, and her Grim Reaper side being a little bit more obsessed with death. The story is presented on a whole bunch of different platforms, including music, comic books, and concerts. If you go to Google right now, type in September Mourning, that's mourning with a U, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's something completely and utterly unique in a world that is literally flooded with content. There's nothing else like it, and that's what we're here to discuss today. September is going to tell us about the band's most recent singles. They dropped 2 songs back in 2018, as well as their upcoming tour with the Cottonmouth Kings, another group who, in a world of flooded talent, is utterly unique. And if you were going to see one show this summer that features bands that you might not be that familiar with, I would say that that's a good one to choose because both Cottonmouth Kings and September Mourning are singular unto themselves. There is nobody else like either of those groups. They're worth the ticket price alone, but together, it's pretty much an unstoppable guarantee that you're going to have a great night out. Emily, or should I say September, is also going to tell us a little bit about what's on the horizon for the group. You know, where do they go from here? How do you build this project into something even bigger than what it has already become? And before we get there, I want to tell you a few quick things. First and foremost, this episode of Inside Music and all episodes of Inside Music are brought to you by Holix, the industry's leading digital promotional distribution platform. And what that means is that Holix works with record labels, artists, and publicists from all over the world to share new and unreleased music with tastemakers. And that can mean anyone from television and radio to print, blogs, podcasts, vloggers, and so many things in between. And Holix is trusted by some of the biggest names in music right now. Chance the Rapper, Metallica, Blink-182, Niall Horan, A Perfect Circle. All of these groups use Holix to promote their new release, and you can too, starting for free by signing up today. Yes, if you go to Holix.com, that's HAULIX.com today and sign up, you will get your first month of service absolutely free. If you decide it's not for you, that's perfectly fine. Just cancel your account before that month is over, and there will be no harm, no foul, no bills. Once again, that's Holix.com, HAULIX.com. You should also be following Holix on Twitter because that's where you can learn about this show, Inside Music, and everything else we have going on. We have some live appearances in the works. We have a lot of great blogs and video content coming out, so head over to @Holix, that's HAULIX on Twitter. We're also on Facebook. Finally, if you need some video content in your life, go to YouTube and look up Music Biz 101. That's Music Biz 101. It's a new video series hosted by yours truly where we walk through different areas of the music industry and how to excel at them. A lot of the videos focus on building a community, developing strong marketing materials, promoting your new music, and similar topics. So head over there today, Music Biz 101 on YouTube, and subscribe. Now, I think that's everything I have for right now. As I already mentioned, September Mourning will be headed out on tour with Cottonmouth Kings in just a short while, so check that out if you can. But for right now, sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with September.
I'm in Los Angeles.
Fantastic. Are you a native or are you a transplant?
Oh, yeah, I'm from New York.
Well, then you made the right decision. Moving out to LA. How long have you been in LA?
too long.
Good answer. Good answer.
Too long. I want to move back to New York, but I can't afford it yet. So
You want to move back to
here I sit.
to the city or to the rest of New York?
To the city.
Yeah,
I'm from the city. I want to move back home.
Oh, okay. I feel like that happens eventually. No matter what city you move to, after long enough, you're like, I have a city. I can go back to my original city.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly. And I've lived in like 3 different countries and I've toured a lot. So it's okay if I go stay home for a little while, you know?
No, absolutely. And I definitely get the touring aspect of that as well. I talk to a lot of people who it seems like if you tour long enough, you start to not even want to live in the city and you just move to the middle of nowhere. Like I did, I had someone on the show last week who had just moved to some town, I forget the name of it, that was like between San Antonio and Austin. And I was like, that's just nowhere. It's just
Yeah,
flat
well,
plains.
you get to a point when in a band, I guess, like where you guys are just so like set, you know, that and everything's just kind of like is an autopilot that you really just don't need to be in a major city anymore. You know, you don't need to go to the parties. You don't need it. You know, you've kind of like blazed your path. You're kind of on your path, and that's you just need to work on your craft, and you just need to like focus. You know, and sometimes that focus and that work ethic comes from a spot that's like in the middle of nowhere. You know, because there's no distractions.
Absolutely. And I don't know exactly what all is going on in the world of September Mourning right now. I know you guys just are a part of this Cottonmouth Kings tour that's coming up, which I want to talk to you about. But you did put out 2 singles last year. Are you working on new material right now, or what is your current projects related to this band? I guess is a better way to say it since it's so multifaceted.
Well, we put out, we just released the complete collection, which is an awesome graphic novel if you're into graphic novels, and it's basically like 4 issues of the comic book kind of combined into one book, and it's through Image Comics, Top Cow Comics, and it's available at Barnes and Noble, Target.com, Image Comics, and Top Cow websites, and also on the Sumerian merch page. So you can grab that, and if you don't know about the story of September Mourning, you can read all about it in that graphic novel. It basically is the first, anthology of September Mourning.
Yeah, I really love how multifaceted you are with this project because I spend a lot of time writing articles about and speaking at conferences about like how to make a name for yourself in music or make a name for yourself in entertainment. And I meet a ton of young artists and aspiring musicians who feel overwhelmed with the idea of just having multiple social media handles in a band at the same time. And you've taken it to like the opposite extreme where I feel like there's nothing that you kind of aren't involved in as a creative person that all kind of circles around your music.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to handle, and it's exhausting. But it's kind of like why I did the band. I wanted to do. I don't really call it a band. I call it an art project because it's more about like a storyline and these characters and all the music and the art and the visuals and the books and the whatever we do like stems from those characters. So it's not really just this 4 guys in t-shirts up there playing music. It's like this whole experience.
Absolutely, and it's something that even before I was aware of the music and aware of like what you were doing, that it's so perfectly, I guess, built and constructed that instant brand recognition. It makes you want to know what that is. You're all immediately like, what is happening here? I need to know. I need to know the entire story right away. And I feel like the benefit is that that's kind of a perpetual thing. I mean, maybe I would hope that's your experience, is that you constantly are finding people who are just discovering the thing and they kind of tear through it, especially as you have so much content now that people can really, almost like when you discover a new streaming series and you can kind of dive into the world in a big way.
Yeah, you can kind of like binge watch it. Binge watch September Mourning. Yeah, so it's a little bit of that.
Well, let's talk about this upcoming tour because I don't know that I would, in my brain, there's so much going on with the idea of Cottonmouth Kings and September Mourning going on tour. So how did this come together? Do they approach you? Does someone call you and say, do you guys want to go out with Cottonmouth Kings? How does this tour come together?
I mean, it happens a lot of different ways. We were looking for something and they were looking for a band and they thought we were cool. And, that's kind of how it happens. Usually the bigger guys, like, you submit, and if they think that you're cool and they're like, oh, I like that band, then they end up taking you out, it's they're really cool dudes. I haven't met them yet, but like I'm a big fan of course what they've done. They're kind of like a legacy act. And it's cool to tour with something that's not just straight up rock, to do something that's a little bit like off the cusp and a little bit different, because our project is so different and a little bit weird and unusual. So it's cool to go out with another project that has a little bit of that going on.
I guess something that excites you about a tour like this is the idea that there are people out there in the world who might not know what's gonna happen when someone like September Mourning is on tour with a band like the Cottonmouth Kings, or just that uphill battle that will probably occur, and I'm sure has already occurred, where you get on stage and it's like, okay, now we gotta bring you into our world, as opposed to.
Well, I mean, it's always going to be like that with any band you go out with. It doesn't matter who they are. You're never going to be accepted right from the gate. Like even we played 3 shows with Rob Zombie, and I knew everybody was there. I mean, we did have fans there, but the majority of the people there were for Rob. They're his fan base. They love him. They worship him, and they're there for him. And, we're just lucky to be there and just show people who we are. And the conversion rate was really good, and, and we're really happy with it. But, we had to, by the 3rd or 4th song, they were really into it. The first song, they were kind of like, what is this? And then they're kind of like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then, oh yeah, I'll sing along. And then they're raising their flashlights on their phones and waving them back and forth by the end of the set. So it's like, I mean, that kind of happens all the time, because, you're not, when you go out with a bigger band, it's always kind of like that. Like they're the headliner. They're the ones that draw the people in, you have your fans, of course, but you're probably not going to have as much as the headliner, or else you would be the headliner. So, so there's always going to be a conversion rate, and a chance for you to really show people like what you do. So I think it's an exciting thing. It's not an uphill battle at all. I think that's a negative connotation. I would say that it's more like kind of, just a chance. It's a chance to like show people, who you are. And if people like you, that's cool. You can be the ripest peach in the world, and some people just don't like peaches.
That's a great metaphor. I like it. And I know that I appreciate how much you think about, I guess, something I've always been curious about knowing of September Mourning is how much it is an art project, but you clearly have such a mind for business, because you dropped the phrase conversion rate so perfectly in that response. And I was like, this is someone that approaches things with a little bit of a business mindset. The numbers of it all.
Yeah. Well, you kind of have to be a business person in music nowadays. It's very much that. I think a lot of artists nowadays are very business orientated, because it's like, you're a business owner, and more so now than ever, you're kind of in control of your business more so now than ever, I mean, labels still exist. Obviously people are on labels and stuff like that, but for the most part, the artist and the manager are driving the car. They're the ones that really have to formulate the business plan, and it's very much a business plan. So I think a lot of artists would agree with that.
On the band front of what September Mourning is, you guys have that run in June with Cottonmouth Kings. Do you have, I guess, what is your vision for what comes after it? You have the collection out now, you have the tour coming up. That's a short run.
We're going to be doing some more releases coming up in the fall, and also tours in the fall and the winter. So our whole year is pretty much planned out right now.
So you're really ramping up right now, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's ever really ramping up. You just kind of continue, you just kind of like continue to, it's such I find that music is such a different game nowadays. It's like, well, I mean, maybe not in rock as much, because rock is always kind of like 10 steps behind pop and hip hop at the moment, and how they approach the business side of this. But in pop and hip hop, you see these artists and they're releasing tracks like every other week. I mean, it's like a thing. Like they're not waiting to drop an album anymore. It's like they drop a couple singles. It's a singles game. So I think the key to keeping an audience and keeping them there and fresh with you is really supplying them with new material. You know, the more that you do that and the more that you're connecting with them online and in person, and it's really a personal approach to the music business, the more that you are personal with your audience and with your fans, the more that you will see the growth. You know, there's no real ramp up. It's just like this growth process, I think, nowadays. And it's like, it's a little bit more, it's weird because it's kind of like, you know, everybody started with grassroots and then, you know, we went into that cycle where it's like major labels. And now it's back to this weird grassroots thing where it's like a lot of these really successful artists are playing the game quite differently than it's ever been played before. And they're being very successful at it, and it's very lucrative for the artists. And I think that's a really exciting time.
Absolutely. I was just
be in the music business.
I was just talking to the guys in Of Mice and Men a few weeks ago, and they kind of echoed what you were saying. They were like, well, we recorded enough material for an album. It was their way of saying it, but we don't know that we're just going to put out 13 songs at once. Like we might just put out a song, see how long it goes, put out another song, and just kind of try that approach, because they echoed what you said, which is that the rate of people, how people want to consume things and how quickly they want something new has changed so much that you need to try something different than like, here's 13 songs at once and then 18 months before something else happens.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. You have to, it's the gestulation period. I guess that's the word. Maybe that's not a word. I don't know. Of digesting things with audiences now is crazy fast. It's like, you know, people are just on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. Oh, the single is great. It's popping. It's happening. It's hot. It's like, weeks later, what is it now? You know, and it's crazy. And I think they're right on the nose with, you know, piecemealing out new material and content, like not just a song, but a video, you know, a live stream, like there's so many different things that you can do now because of the internet and like how we're all so just plugged in. You can just, you know, really get in the face of your fans more often. And it's exciting. I think it's really cool. You know, it makes it also personal. And that's a pretty exciting thing when you build up a fan base that you really consider your family. And I really do consider our family, our fan base.
And I feel like you're really in the best position someone could be in for this kind of evolution, at least in the world of rock, because you've always approached this as such a multifaceted thing that where other people might be scrambling to be like, how do we create, you know, more types of content or different content to keep our fans going? You have like a smorgasbord of options at any time to be like, we can do some of this, or we could do this. You can change what kind of thing you're delivering through the name of September Mourning. And I feel like that really places you in a great point for this time in rock music.
Well, I think it gives it opens the doors to creativity on the platform of September Mourning, because there's just so many outlets for it. You know, you have the comic book, you have the comic book art, you have, you know, like we're, you know, putting together different types of merch that deal with that. And it's exciting. We're putting out, you know, we're probably going to drop another book towards the end of the year, which is a little bit different from the graphic novel, but still in the same sort of genre. And it's just, I mean, there's just so many different things that we can do that it just breeds so much content. So it's an exciting time.
How far in advance, I mean, I'm sure you always have ideas, but like how far in advance do you have planned out for like your vision of September Mourning between music and books and the whole world of art? How far out is the project from where you are right now? Like, do you know the next year of like, here's what I want to do and how we're going to get there?
Yeah, well, as a business person, in any business, you try to plan a year or two in advance of what you're going to be doing. And so, you know, we're looking at next summer right now, what we're doing next summer. Like we've planned out pretty much what we're doing through the end of the year, what we want to do beginning of next year, into the spring. And then we're planning on, okay, now what are we going to do in the summer next year? So you have to be really, especially like we were both just saying, and the Of Mice and Men guys who are awesome. I love those guys. They're amazing. But like, you know, like they were saying too, is like, it's good to keep doing content. So that being said, you have to like plan. You can't just plan, oh, we're going to drop this album. You got to plan, oh, we're going to drop this single, and then we're going to do this video, and then we're going to do this live streaming. So there's just so much more to plan, because you have to do so many different things based around so much content. So because of that, you have to think ahead, and you have to think quite far ahead.
This is the kind of thing I love to talk about, because the goal of the show is always to kind of give insight into how people make a career out of what they're doing in music. And what I've always loved about your story is that you had an idea and you went out and you found a way to not only conceptualize, but to actually act on that idea and make it. And so I guess my question to you is, what advice would you give to someone that's kind of in where you started at today? Because I feel like the one advantage that people starting today may have is that the ease of access to getting into some of these fields that you started off in is maybe easier, just because the barrier to entry is less. But what is your general advice to people who are like, I want to do something this grand?
Well, I mean, just know what you're getting into. Like, I think the problem with musicians and artists today is that they expect, like, oh, I'm going to write a song, and then I'm going to write an album, and I'm going to drop it, and I'm going to be a star, and I'm going to be playing Madison Square Garden in a year. And that's just not how it works. Like most bands take about 10 years to kind of find their niche market. The overnight successes are the ones we hear about most often, but they're not the ones that are the market share. The market share of bands, like you look at a band like Nothing More, right? And Nothing More like burst onto the scene a couple years ago with that album. But no, Nothing More has been around 10 years prior to that with a different singer. So like Muse is another good example. Muse dropped so many albums, and then they finally broke in the United States. And that was like, I don't even know what album that was on their list. It wasn't their first, it wasn't their second, it wasn't even their third. In This Moment is another band that did the same thing. They were more of a t-shirts and jeans band for their first, I think, 4 albums or 3 albums. And then all of a sudden she comes out with this theatrical presentation on Blood and drops Blood, and their shit finally works. You know what I'm saying? And now they're touring large theaters, and they're, making a really big splash. But it took 10 years for that to gesticulate, and I keep using that word, and I really have to look that up. It takes time. And I think that a lot of people, they don't get the instant gratification, which I think in this world today, especially because of the internet and because of social media, everybody's used to instant gratification. And if they don't get it, they don't want to fight. But you have to realize your motives in what you're doing. If you're doing it if you're chasing fame, you have a lottery ticket chance of making it. If you're chasing art, then you have more of a chance of actually communicating your art and your process and making money at it, because you're going to do it for the fight of the art. You're not doing it for the fight of fame. And when you're fighting for art and you're just fighting to put your art out there and communicate with your audience, that's much more of a drive and a passion that can be extended for a longer period of time. And all those bands that I spoke about, they did it for art. They did it because they wanted to communicate something. And there's a beauty in that.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this, because we've had a few people that have transitioned from the world of music into the world of comics. I don't know that we've ever had a comic artist that moved into the world of music. But for you, kind of straddling the two worlds, which has I guess a harder learning curve, or which would you say is more difficult from a creative standpoint? Is it developing the comic side of what you're doing, or the music side of what you're doing?
People mention that, and they talk about that, and I think it's really interesting, because I don't really look at it like that. I look at it like, I think it's a very, as an artist, it's a very personal thing of like how hard it gets, because it really doesn't have, the first album, you have your whole life to do the first album, but like, I think that it just depends on artistically how you're made up. because a lot of people, practice makes perfect on them. And if they continue to write songs, their songs get even better. For example, Lady Gaga. Let's take Lady Gaga for a minute. Like, Lady Gaga's first album, The Fame or whatever, was huge, right? But that first album wasn't really, if you want to talk about songs and things like that, that really wasn't her first. That was her first debut as Lady Gaga, but she has been writing songs for years prior to that.
Yes.
And she has probably written like albums worth of songs. So technically that's like her fifth album. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, you know, it's just kind of, it all comes down to your life and what inspires you and where you take your creativity and your inspiration from, because that is going to dictate what you do and when you do it. And I think that's more of where the hardship lies, because some people aren't that inspired on their first album. They think they are, but then they get into their third album and they're like, oh no, now I've learned this is how you do this, and this is what works, and this is what resonates, and this is how you resonate with people. Like I said, there's a lot of bands that have been around for years and years and years and nothing clicked. And then all of a sudden, you know, the audience finds them. So, and it's on their fifth album or it's on their fourth album, or, you know, so, I mean, in that way, music is like that. In comics, I'm not so familiar with the world as far as, you know, the people that are in it and what they've, you know, done right from the get-go, because you always hear the success stories, but there's a lot of toil that comes before the success. You know, it's the 10-year overnight sensation. You know, it's like there's a lot of practice. There's a lot of, like, you know, mess ups that happen before they hit it. Generally, it's not like the first thing you draw is going to be huge, you know, like that's not usually the case. And a lot of writers and a lot of comic book artists and writers, they don't just do one book. They come up with like 15, 20, 30, 40 ideas. And then out of those 40 ideas, one of them takes off, you know? So it's kind of like, I really think it's a little bit different. You know, I think that if you look at it a little bit differently, you'll find truth somewhere in there.
I think that's a strong answer. When I think of comics, I always think of I guess it's an obvious choice, but I always think of like Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo as a team. Everyone loves what they've done with Batman in the last couple of years, but they both had gigantic careers in comics before then.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at Mark Silvestri. You look at his career, right? And he started drawing for Marvel and the big guys, right? You know, but he didn't really come into his own, in my opinion, until he did The Darkness and Witchblade and things like that. But those were, you know, that's when he formed his own company. That wasn't under the big guys. That was when he formed his own company. So, like, you know, sometimes you have to find your home before you can really make something beautiful, you know?
Absolutely. That was a very good response. This is a conversation that happens on the show from time to time about this topic, and I think that was maybe the most succinct version of the answer that I've gotten on it. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I don't want to keep you for too much longer. I do want to recap what you guys are promoting right now. You know, you have this tour coming up. It starts June 6th in Rockford, Illinois, wraps up in Flint, Michigan, which are two very close places, but you're going all over the place in between those two dates, all the way out to Fargo, North Dakota. Fun city. I don't think people appreciate how good of a rock city Fargo, North Dakota can be.
Hey, they did a good movie.
There you go. That was
and
a good
TV
poll.
series. So
And a TV series. Yeah, there you go. So if anyone is in that area, make sure to check out September Mourning. The collection is out now. You can find it on all the comics, right? It's on Comixology as well, right? I believe I saw it on there.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is on Comics.
I always struggle saying the name. I was like, X's in the middle of words can be difficult sometimes.
Yeah, well, you just saw me like like mouth vomit, gesticulate. So there you go. We both got that.
We both got one, and we both got a flubbing. That's fine. And you guys do have the
Why
two.
did he even come up with that word? Have you ever done that though? You're talking and like these words come into your mind, and you're like, I don't know if that's right, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. And then after you say it, you're like, that was so not the right word.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
or you throw a word
so
out
bad.
and you're like, man, I hope they don't ask me what I mean by that. You're just like,
yeah, exactly. Because it's like one of those words that you read, you know, like I'm an avid reader, and like I'll read things and absorb them, and I won't quite know the exact like verbiage or like where I should put things, or like, and then I'll just try to throw it out in conversation, and I'll sound like a really like illiterate person. It's so embarrassing.
I feel you. I did it the other day with the word enigmatic, again, a word that I read all the time.
Okay.
And I used it in a sentence to describe someone, and then I was in the back of my brain, I was like, oh, I don't know if that was correct.
Yes, and you're like, oh, and you hear the bombs going off in your brain.
Yeah, and it's a testament to the other people, because if they just accept it in the back of your brain, you're like either they don't want to make me feel bad, I used it right, or I'm the smartest person in the room, or I've just fooled all these people.
Or they don't know what the hell I'm talking about anyway. So
they're just like,
going with it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. They're like me. They've read it somewhere, and they're like, yeah, that sounds like the right word to use here. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I thank you for taking 30 minutes out of your day to chat with me today. And I hope to see you guys.
So much.
I hope to come to the show at the Machine Shop in Flint. I've never been there. I've been waiting, and I love the Kings.
What? You have to come.
I live in Grand Rapids,
yeah,
so I'm by the intersection over here, which I think you guys have been to a few times.
Yeah, of course. You should definitely come.
All right, this could be my first trip to the Machine Shop. You've heard it here. We'll do it then. I'll just save it for another month.
Okay. We'll pop your cherry.
Woo! All right. You have a great week.
Okay, thank you. Bye.